guys, today's lesson is multiplying decimals, and if you already have a good grasp of multiplying, this should be very simple. Alright, so when you are multiplying a decimal by a whole number, so we're starting out with multiplying a decimal by a whole number. Multiply as with whole numbers, so do your regular multiplication. Then to place the decimal point in the product, remember product is the answer to a multiplication problem, we can use estimation or count the decimal places. So there's two different options for finding out where your decimal goes, and we'll discuss both of those. So our first example is 1 82/100 times 3. Now remember, with adding and subtracting decimals, you have to line them up. With multiplying, you do not, okay? Because you can multiply just as you normally would. Okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and do a multiplication. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 8 is 24. Carry my 2. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 2 is 5. Okay? And so all I need to do is figure out where my decimal goes. Well, I can use estimation. 1 82/100 is about 2 times 3. Well, I know that 2 times 3 is 6. So I need an answer that's close to 6. Well, there's only one place I can put the decimal in order to have an answer that's close to 6, and that's here between the 5 and the 4. Okay? Your other option is to count the decimal places. So here we have 2 numbers behind the decimal, and so that means that we should have 2 numbers behind the decimal in our product. Alright, and so let's move on to our second example here. We've got 2 7/10 times 4. So again, I do not have to line up the decimals. So 2 7/10 times 4. Multiply as I would with whole numbers. So 4 times 7 is 28. Carry my 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 2 is 10. Okay? And now I need to make sure where my decimal goes. So I can use estimation. 2 7/10 is about 3. Times 4 would give me 12. So my answer or product should be close to 12. Well, there's only one place I can put the decimal to get close to 12, and that would be here between the 0 and the 8 to give me 10 8/10. Okay? The other way is to count our decimal places. So here I have one number behind the decimal. Here I should have one number behind the decimal as well. Okay? And so our answer is 10 8/10. Alright, I want you to take a moment and try a couple of examples on your own. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video while you try these 2 examples. So your first example, 1 63/100 times 7. Just do our multiplication as normal. If you do your estimation, you should get 2 times 7 is 14, and the only place we can put the decimal to get to close to 14 is here. You can also count the decimal places, so 2 numbers behind the decimal here means 2 numbers behind the decimal in our product. Okay? In your second example, 1 324,000 times 6, I got 7944. If I do my estimation, 1 times 6 gave me 6, so I want to get as close to 6 as I can, and that means my decimal has to be behind the 7. Okay? I can also count decimal places, so 3 numbers behind the decimal in the problem means 3 numbers behind the decimal in our product. Okay? So hopefully those went well for you. Let's move on to the next step. Alright, so now we're looking at how to place the decimal point in the product of 2 decimals. So those first examples we did a decimal times a whole number. Now we're doing a decimal times a decimal. Okay? Use estimation or find the sum of the decimal places. So now we might need to find the sum of the decimal places. What does sum mean? Answer to an addition problem. Okay, so we're adding up all the decimal places in the problem. So let's see what that looks like. Our first example, we've got 9/10 times 8/10. And remember, the decimals don't have to line up, but in this problem they just happen to. Okay, so I've got multiplying as normal. 8 times 9 is 72. Carry my 7. 8 times 0 is 0. Plus 7 is 7. Now, I hope that you know that multiplying by 0 is just going to give you a 0, so we don't even have to use that. Okay? So now, let's use estimation first. So estimation says this is 1 times 1. Okay? So that means 1 times 1 means my answer should be close to 1. Okay? Now, a common mistake is somebody might bring this decimal straight down and you have 7 2/10. Well, that's not close to 1 if you look at your estimation. To get close to 1, this decimal would have to be out here, and we have 0 72/100, we would round up to 1. Okay? Let's check it with the other way, which is finding the sum of the decimal places. Where here, I have one number behind the decimal, and I have one number behind the decimal here. So if I do the sum of my decimal places, there's a total of 2 numbers behind the decimal in the problem. So I need to have 2 numbers behind the decimal in my answer. So our product is 72/100. Okay? In our second example, we've got 4 7/100 times 3 1/10. And remember, you do not have to line up those decimals. Okay? So I'm going to do my multiplication like I normally would. 1 times 7, 1 times 0, 1 times 4. Okay, and remember, to do our multiplication times the 3, we've got to start underneath the 3. Okay, so I'm going to put my 0 here as a placeholder so that I don't mix that up. And I'm going to do 3 times 7, which is 21, carry my 2. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2. And then 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, and so when I add those up, I've got 7, 1, 6, 2, 1. We just got to figure out where the decimal goes. So I'm going to start with estimation. 4 times 3. Well, 4 times 3 tells me that my answer should be about 12. Well, where can I place the decimal to get close to 12? That would be between the 2 and the 6. Okay? Well, let's check it the other way using the sum of the decimal places. So here, we've got 2 numbers behind the decimal. Here we have 1 number behind the decimal, and we want the sum of those. So 2 plus 1 means I should have a total of 3 numbers behind the decimal in my product, which I do. So my product is 12 617 thousandths. All right? So multiply like you normally would. Then you can either use estimation or find the sum of your decimal places to find where your decimal point should go. All right? So I want you to take a moment, pause the video, and try these next 2 examples. Okay, let's check your answers. 1 400 times 2 3/10. Do my multiplication like I normally would, and don't forget that you have to have that placeholder when you start multiplying by the 2. I got 2392, and so I can use estimation. So this would be close to 1 times 2, which is 2. So I want an answer that's close to 2, okay? Or I can add up or find the sum of my decimal places. So here there are 2 numbers behind the decimal, 1 number behind the decimal. 2 plus 1 means I should have a total of 3 numbers behind the decimal, which gives me 2 392 thousandths, okay? In your second example, you had 600 times 2 4800. And just before we go through this one, guys, if you put the 2 4800, that's okay. On top, that's okay, because the commutative property tells us we can multiply in any order, okay? So I just went in the order of the problem, hopefully just thinking that that was where your mind was going to. I don't know. Normally I would have put the 600s on the bottom. But anyway, so multiplying like I normally would. Remember that when we get to multiplying by this 4, I need a placeholder starting underneath the 4. When I get to multiplying by this 2, I have to put 2 zeros or 2 placeholders and start my multiplication underneath the 2. Okay? So I had 0, 1, 4, 8, 8. When I use my estimation, 0 and 600 is very close to 0. 2 and 4800 is about 2 or 3. Okay, so I just rounded to the nearest whole number, which was 0 times 2, telling me my answer should be close to 2. Okay? Or excuse me, close to 0. I'm sorry, 0 times 2, 0. Okay? So don't make the mistake of bringing that decimal straight down, because you'd have an answer close to 14 or 15. Okay? So close to 0 means I need to have 0.1488. Okay? Or add up the sum of my decimal places. So 2 numbers behind the decimal here, 2 numbers behind the decimal here. So that's a sum of 4 numbers behind the decimal, which gives you 0 and 1,488 10 thousandths. Okay? So make sure you're using that place value terminology when you're looking at these decimal numbers. Alright? So hopefully those went well for you. If you need to, you know to rewind, rework the problems, take it at a slower pace if you need to. All right, and before you get done, make sure that you do your reflection. It should be at least 2 complete sentences. And today's reflection question is, why is estimating the product a good practice for determining decimal placement when multiplying decimals? Okay? All right, see you later. Bye.